So we're going to focus on how our institution has learned from going through this process, and it has been a very long journey. Let me emphasize that again, very long journey. This did not happen overnight, and it took a lot of people, a lot of hours, and a lot of work to make this happen. And you also need somebody, you need the cheerleader, you need the champion. You have to have somebody that is always going to be positive about the work. You got to have that person remind you to celebrate your successes, because if you don't stop and celebrate your successes along the way, there is no way you're ever going to appreciate how far you've come. You also need the, my husband would call it the realist in the group, who will remind you of all the things you haven't done. Thank you, but give us one moment to celebrate our successes. And already I have to say, by looking at what you've done, and by looking at the website of Project 90 and learning some of the things that have been going on, I have to say, already you guys deserve a round of applause for what you've done already, so congratulations. So you're learning from this, and so did we. Next time. You need to, now that you have done this, our thought was during Achieving the Dream, it came along at the right time for us. We were going through a whole, reorganization. We got a new president, a lot was going on for us. We got a new vice president, just a lot of stuff. Does that sound familiar at all? So it was the right time, right place. It was the perfect storm for change to occur. And I think you guys are at the same place we were back when this started. So you really need to recognize how different this might feel from previous attempts at innovation and change. You need to be the change agent. You need to overcome some of the things that may be struggling. We also realized that we kept ignoring that social justice issue. We kept not talking about the students that are historically underserved. We also needed to choose the fix strategies, and be careful on how you use that word, because it's not going to fix everything. The strategies are not going to always work the original way they were designed. You may have to make adjustments to them and go from there as you start thinking about things that are working within your institution. And then you have to talk about how you can bring them to scale. Achieving the Dream helped us focus on all of these. We had to look at the results of the things that we had implemented. We didn't want to go start from scratch. We had to look at already the data that we already had. We wanted to have the folks that were involved in that could come to the table and share those results. Because you've got to have somebody that's passionate about that work, talk about what it is. Okay? If you get results and they're not what you anticipate, think about this from a student perspective for a moment. If you get results and they didn't come out the way you were expecting, what do?
Change.
You change. How do you change? Do you throw everything away? You're a student now. Did you throw everything away when you got the results that were not successful? No, you reevaluated what you were doing, right? And you used those results to change the way you studied, to change the way you did things, right? You don't just take the lesson and go, you know what, I'm going to quit now because that didn't work. Because that's what the students do that don't know what they don't know, right? They will quit and never come back, right? So are we going to model that as administrators and faculty and staff at this institution, say, you know what, it didn't work the very first time I'm trying it, so we're going to quit? No, we're not going to model that. We're going to say, you know what, it didn't work, but now I have a better idea of how to make it successful, right? And keep continuing that cycle. Don't quit. We also have an external commitment, as do you. It sounds like you've got some things going on here in the state. So we had a Lumina Foundation, as well as a lot of different partners. So it was Lumina, Gates Foundation is on board with it now, Carnegie was involved, Dana Center was involved. I can't even tell you, there's at least AACC is involved in the work that we did. There are so many partners in this work that we were set up to get the support needed to keep trying these things. Not a lot of money, by the way, but we were set up to get that. I will say that the amount of money a year for an institution our size, it was $100,000 a year. That's not much. An institution our size, What's mathematics capital about? Not much. Okay. We had goals and timelines. We were being held to the fire because we knew we were going to need to report out to our colleagues that were also engaged in this work about the goals and timelines that we set forth. If we don't establish goals from the beginning and we don't come up with a timeline, we have no way to measure whether we're accomplishing those things. So it's difficult to do, but important, right? Okay. Progress reports, you've got to report to everybody. The faculty need to come to talk to the student services folks, the student services and the faculty, and you have to get rid of those silos that are between administrators, between student services and academic services. You've got to knock down those barriers and have conversations across the board. These progress reports are a way to do that. And you've got to work hard to make that happen. As you're working hard, and any time you feel like you're coming up to a struggle, can you go back to why you came and decided to work at the community college? Because you are the voice for the learner, right? You are the voice for these underserved population, and you need to remind yourself, I'm the change agent, I got to make this happen. So as you keep going through this, keep saying, I'm the change agent, I have to make this happen. Okay. We also had coaching, guidance, and encouragement often, okay? Byron McClenny was our coach for Achieving the Dream. He was a former president. The structure of Achieving the Dream was so that it was all former college presidents were coaches for the schools that were involved. Hugely important because it was the understanding of how to run a college, the administrative type work that goes into it, right? And also how to work with your faculty members and give you some feedback on how to make sure it looked and felt and acted like it should. In other words, if the administrative support is not there, there is no way this is going to happen. If the faculty support is not there, hell's going to freeze over before this happens, right? You know what I'm talking about. So you have to get the coach, and by the way, the encouragement is huge. Byron McClenny came to our college one day and said, I know this is frustrating, stay the course. I mean, he just kept going, you have to stick with it, do the best you can, keep trying, and then he kept reminding us, why did you get into community colleges? And that's really huge. You need to make a connection to your learners. Here is a big thing. When you are doing these things and you're making plans, you need to not think of it from the perspective of how is this going to make my life easier as a dean or administrator. You need to think of it as how is this going to make the student's experience here the best it can be. In other words, I had a story that I told yesterday that happened. I teach pre-algebra at Valencia, and I had a really horrible experience that I'm going to share because I think it's to this point about the connection to the community of learners. I encourage them to go on a scavenger hunt and find all of the student support services as part of their grade. It's one of their first non-math grades in my class, so they have to go and find folks that can help them with tutoring in math and writing center services, and where is the testing center, and where can you get help with computer stuff, and where do you go? I mean, it's a whole scavenger hunt, and they have to sign off on it, and they go with a group, so it's less scary. So their group goes, and they go to all of these places together and get signatures. I actually got a letter back, a little note on the bottom of paper number 5, that said, Julie, please do not send your students directly to us. And he refused to sign several of their papers, this person. He was gone by the time the class was over. Of course, they turned it in, they told me about their horrible experience. Do you think one of those students, remember these are the students that know the least about college, right? These are the students that are in the lowest level of mathematics. They're probably also in prep reading and prep writing, right? And I've now told them where all these support services are, and now they've had a bad experience. Do you think they are going to go to any of those services because of that number 5? No, they're not going back. So of course, you know, so I gave them in class, I said, oh no, don't worry about number 5, I'm going to go take care of it. And this is where I think I'm going with this. I think I'm going to actually follow up and bring him into the classroom and have him publicly apologize to the students. That's where I am with this. because they need to know that there is somebody watching out for them. There is somebody that recognized they had a bad experience, and this person needs to apologize for being a total jerk. Because we need the students to have the best experience, because already the odds are stacked against them. I did take it up with the supervisor because he went home, so I'm still waiting for the outcome of that. This happened last Wednesday. So I'm still waiting to figure out what happened. So I am going to ask him to come in and apologize to my students, because that is ridiculous. Anyway, so you need to make a connection to your learners and look at everything that you're doing from the perspective of what's going to make their journey at college better. You guys have all this innovation here. Use it. You have all this energy. Everything's positive. Use it to make it good.